Do you want to know how to improve mental health sustainably in 2022? Well, then watch this video to find out. Hello, my name is Jesse. Welcome to the channel Open Source Owners, where we talk about what would it be like if humans had an owner's manual. Well, mental health is a big part of that owner's manual, and that's what this video is all about. So let's get into it. All right, here are the top 4 keys to improve your mental health sustainably in a way that is actually going to last beyond just symptom management, beyond just improving your mood temporarily, but indefinitely into the future. The first key is to upgrade your biological health. Now, biological, I'm talking about like your neurotransmitter function, how your mitochondria are functioning, your microbiome, all things like that. If you don't know about any of that sort of stuff, poke around on my channel and you'll find out much more about all those things that I just mentioned. But just to give a broad overview, the first thing to do, in my opinion, is to upgrade the biological health. Now, how do you do that? Well, try controlling your blood sugar. If you've never done this before, this is one of the critical drivers of basically all chronic disease, including mental health, and that is having massive blood sugar spikes throughout the day. And that basically comes down to what you're eating, what types of food you're eating, when you're eating them, and when you're not eating them, which would be called like a fasting window. The number one suggestion that I encourage everybody to do is get the book 10-Day Detox Diet by Dr. Mark Hyman. Click the link below if you want to grab that book. And the reason is these average results that show up when people do this. And again, it's just 10 days, so it's the fastest possible diet that I know of, but it goes beyond just a fad diet and it goes into actually dealing with that primary driver of chronic inflammation, or one of the primary drivers of chronic inflammation, which is blood sugar regulation and blood sugar control. Check out these average results here. On average, over 10 days, people have about 8 pounds of weight loss, an 18-point drop in fasting blood sugar, which is the what you want. That's the direction you want your blood sugar to be going in, at least at first. Up to 10 inches loss around the waist, around 10 inches loss around the hips, and an average blood pressure drop of 10 points, right? And that's just from trying this 10-day detox sort of diet for just those 10 days. That's it. You don't have to go beyond that. But once you do that, you'll actually begin to notice how you respond to foods, what types of foods antagonize your anxiety or depression or any mental health illnesses. And you actually just sort of create this like reset on the biological level. And hopefully it'll lead you toward eating a less carb, a less highly refined sugar sort of pattern or lifestyle, because that's really where we want to end up. I don't believe that we need to pick certain diets and fall directly into categories. I believe we need to learn to eat intuitively, seasonally, and ultimately begin to grow some of our own food to take control over what we're putting into our mouths and the quality of our food, etc. But this is a great start. If you've never done it, I highly encourage you to try it. You might notice improvements in energy, improvements in brain fog, improvements in mental health. All right, the number 2 thing to do is to upgrade your psychological health. Of course, psychology is the domain of like therapy and working with social workers and things like that. We're talking about things like how you deal with trauma, how you have coping skills, how you talk to yourself, how you relate to your own emotions and those emotions of others, particularly relationships. And the number 1 thing to try in this domain is actually 2 things. The first is to identify your attachment style. If you want to take a free attachment style quiz to understand your attachment style, there's only 4. And by the way, if you want to know more about attachment styles, I'll put the video up here. But if you want to just learn what your attachment style is, I'll put a free link below and just click on that. You can go to a wonderful website where they sort of walk you through a few questions. It takes less than 10 minutes and you'll kind of know your attachment style. So super cool. But the number 2 thing to do in this domain, so the attachment style is one piece, that's like part A, but part B is learning your primary coping mechanism or your primary coping strategy. So what are those coping mechanisms? Well, the primary ones, basically this means when you get triggered, particularly in intimate relationships, how do you respond to that? Do you tend to freeze and dissociate? So freeze is like you feel frozen, like you literally kind of get stuck. You can't articulate what's going on. Dissociate, of course, is part of that where it's like you'll have gaps in your memory. You will just sort of like zone out. You will not be able to recall what events that happened. So that's freeze and dissociate. That's one strategy that your nervous system uses to keep you healthy and to keep you safe. And it worked for you in the past. The question is just now, is it working for you currently? Is it still providing benefit to your life, or is it actually having negative effects? And that's the thing with all of these coping mechanisms. They all worked, and they're all sort of innate wisdom of the body and the nervous system, but they may no longer work now. And that's one of the ways that we can upgrade our mental health, is by working on our primary sort of coping mechanism to make it more functional as an adult that we want to be now. So freeze and dissociate is one. Fawning, what about that one? Fawning is like people pleasing, attending to others to make sure that they're happy so that then you in turn can be happy, right? So if you get triggered, if your emotions get hurt, if you feel your traumas get sort of like exposed, if you tend to sort of lean on the other, or make sure that your partner, or make sure that your friends or your mom or your dad is satisfied, is totally taken care of, if you tend to offload your own responsible feelings of taking care of your own wounding to other people, that's typically called fawning. This is the domain of codependency or people pleasing, and it has an association with an attachment style. It comes from somewhere and it makes sense. And again, it served you at some point. It just may no longer be serving you now. The next category of coping mechanisms is fight and flight. So do you tend to fight? Do you tend to get yelly? Do you tend to want to dominate? Do you tend to use your physicality to emotionally control a situation? That's a fighting coping mechanism. Or do you tend to flee? Do you tend to sort of like be like, I got to get out of here, I got to go, and you sort of abandon your partner, or you abandon the situation because it's just overwhelming to the nervous system? And again, historically, the fighting has worked for you in some way, shape, or form, or the fleeing has worked for you in some way, shape, or form. So those are the primary ones. Now there's variations, there's different colors and spectrums on all these, but we want to know, what is our primary defense mechanism? Is it freeze and dissociate as I call it? Is it fawn, tending toward other? Is it fighting, or is it fleeing? Okay, now we're on to upgrading your spiritual health. So there's many things to do with this, but the number one thing that I suggest people do is learn about natural law, or it's sometimes called universal law or spiritual law. And by way of that, learning the 7 Hermetic principles. Those principles are sort of tried and true. They just continue to sort of yield wisdom and results in day-to-day reality. And they actually, the more we can align with natural law and the more we can align with spiritual laws like the Hermetic principles, the smoother our relationship between our mental health and the relationship between our spiritual mooring or our grounding, maybe our morals or our ethics. And if you don't have those, that's fine. If you're maybe atheistic or agnostic, that's totally fine. These will still apply. These spiritual laws, these natural laws, and the 7 Hermetic principles will still apply. They're just good, tried and true wisdom about kind of how the universe works, and thereby how you work as well as part of it. All right, and then lastly, upgrading your social health, upgrading your social tribe, and maybe finding a tribe if you don't have one. So by tribe, I sort of mean a group of people, maybe on the internet, maybe in your town, that is doing health-related activities that you want to emulate. So maybe you want to be more physically active, or maybe you want to be more positive, or maybe you want to be more spiritual. Well, finding a tribe that aligns with that you can sort of plug into, connect with, and then basically you begin to reflect the attitudes, the behaviors, and the embodiment of those practices. So the health tribe could be something like maybe martial arts. They have both mind, body, and spirit sort of involved in the martial arts. Or maybe it's more about walking or cycling, or maybe it's dancing, right? Could be more spiritual grounded. It could be like, I want to connect to a church group, or I need to connect to some type of deeper spiritual group. Or maybe it's a nature thing. Maybe it's like, I want to be with people who want to go and like identify trees or identify plants or do tracking or these types of things. So these are all ways that we can engage the social aspect of being a human. So what is the state of mental health in 2022? Well, unfortunately, it doesn't look that great, but I always want to point this out to sort of say, hey, for one, you're not alone if you're struggling with this. And for two, there's pathways that we can get out of this scenario. Depression is the #1 cause of disability and injury worldwide, affecting about 350 million people each year. That's really a tremendous number of people suffering from depression every single year. And if you're one of that 350 million people, well, just know that you're not alone. Now, what about anxiety? Well, anxiety is the #1 mental health condition in the United States of America, and it affects roughly a little bit lower than 20% of the population every year. So that's 1 in 5 people every year is going to be suffering with a mental health condition known as anxiety. If you are in that category, just know that you're not alone. Now, that doesn't make it better, but it does let you know that it's a pretty ubiquitous, it's a pretty large problem. And if we take everything in total, worldwide, over 1 billion people, right? So again, that's about 1 in 7 in the whole world, or maybe 1 in 8, something like that. But over 1 billion citizens of Earth struggle with a mental health disorder of some type or another. And what's more, 75% of those people do not receive any treatment at all. So that's a high degree of suffering that I would say in large part is sort of undue suffering, that if we could get these people really good treatment, we could resolve a lot of these issues and hopefully lower the total number. That 1 billion number, I want to see that number start to come down, not go up, 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 up. Well, if you're in those boats of the 1 billion people not getting treatment, if you're in the boat of the 350 million people with depression, or the 20% of the United States citizens who have anxiety, and you need a little bit of mentorship, then I've created a very, very simple, affordable program that we can just continually focus on these 4 big areas. Because while it's all good to try to sort of do this on your own, it's a much easier job if you have not only mentorship of someone like myself, but you also have a group that's reflecting these patterns and sort of committing together to sort of do these biological, spiritual, social, psychological upgrades, right? And so this is the program that I've come up with. So if you're interested in this sort of mentorship and this little support, you are totally welcome to join. You can cancel anytime. Go ahead and check it out. Click the link below to find out more. And that was how to improve mental health sustainably in 2022 and beyond, because 2022 will eventually just fold into 2023. And, you know, if we don't work on our mental health now, it's not exactly going to just naturally get better on its own. It may, but often it doesn't for people until we begin to actually address it and actually begin to use our mental health as a way into our own personal development, our own spiritual growth here on Earth, so we can hopefully make the planet, our communities, and our families a better place for all. That's my goal anyway. If you share it, go ahead and click those links below. And please comment what sort of stuck out to you about this video. Go ahead and put your comments below. I would love to read them, and I'll respond to as many as I possibly can. Thank you so much for making it this far. I appreciate you. Have a good one out there. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.